Well, hello, everyone. It's Conscious Medium Brandon Ross here with Whiskey and Bagels. And from the other side of the world is...
astrologer and life coach, Penny Dix. I had a problem there. I was just not quite sure who I was.
Yeah, well, and you were going to swear, and we were just talking about YouTube swearing, and don't do that.
No, not in the first 2.5 minutes.
I'm really not, I'm really not a blue comic, as they call it, right? Where they, where you're effing and all this other stuff. And isn't it ironic that, we all have our devices and everything else. And the cleanest comic in the world, back in the day was Bill Cosby lecturing everybody else about how not to use that language. Try not to slip them the Mickey, would you, Billy? Anyways, so we've got exciting times.
I'll time us.
Yeah, right. There you go. And at 2:31, the flims and flams are going to come in. That was such a Cosby reference. Anyways, enough of him. Square season. We should just start calling the square season with Saturn, Uranus. Like, what's going on in Europe right now? And I mean, we might as well dive right into it because, and our strategy with this was really what's going on globally. And as much as we want to talk about personal, stuff like how it's affecting you, boy, oh boy, is it the headlines, the motions, the notions, everything right now is really just boiling over of all the stuff that if you go back and you watch episodes 13 through 18, we talked about this hitting us hard. So what's going on in Europe?
Yes, well, I don't think anyone can be immune to this Saturn-Uranus square. But we've got to remember we've got a lot of interesting energy at the moment. Not only are we already in the energy of the Saturn-Uranus square, which is really at its peak for its fourth hit during the first 10 days to 2 weeks of October, but we also got the autumn equinox, which in the United States is later tonight for you. And for us here in Europe is in the early hours of tomorrow morning, the 23rd. And we've also got a new moon on the 25th in Libra. So but in terms of how this is playing out in Europe, we've had all the drama, of course, earlier this week of the late Queen of England's funeral, which was incredibly emotive and quite emotionally overwhelming for people that did watch it or were part of it. So that energy is going on. Right. Then you've got, in England, staying still with the UK, you've got the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, who has really been thrown in at the deep end, of course, by becoming Prime Minister just as there is a national, huge, terrible event of the loss of the Queen and a funeral. So she was really thrown in. And
I know you have your opinion about her. You were a little bit like lukewarm, like as in like, I think we can do better, but this isn't gonna, and I'm not trying to put words into your mouth. My perception over here is she's at a minimum been classy. She's trying to set a tone.
Yes, but I'm sorry. I just don't think she pulls it off. Sorry, Liz.
Okay.
I don't think, I just feel she doesn't have enough. If I was her PR girl or her branding person, I would be saying, we've got to find something really different for you that makes you stand out from the crowd. Because at the moment, I think she's trying to impersonate, even almost in the way she speaks, Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret Thatcher, yeah.
Even in the way she's dressing. All we need to see her with is a little handbag slung over her arm and we'll be there. But bearing in mind that we had the funeral this week, and then, of course, we were all sort of distracted in the UK and in Europe to a certain extent from what else might be going on in the world.
I know what you're talking about. Listen, you bring up the new moon in Libra. Why don't we pull up that chart quick?
Yeah, go on.
And just look at this energy, this new moon in Libra, which is happening on the 25th. We're recording this on the 22nd.
Yes.
You can see okay, right?
Yes, I've got it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do one of these. Oh, my Lord, are you even in the shot?
Yes, well, I can see me. I can see me.
Good Lord. I'm going to start again.
Oh, that's a bit small, Brandon. That's a bit small.
Good Lord, what's wrong with
I
me
can't,
today?
I
I thought I
can't
had
see.
everything sized up the right way. All right, can you see it okay on the screen?
Yeah, yeah. It's still a little bit small for me. I really like something a little bit
You like
larger.
it bigger, you say? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
How's that?
Ah, that's better.
You take a
Much
pill,
better.
everything changes. All right, so the yeah, you've got a lot of interesting action here, and of course the squares are the squares, the triangles are the trines, the table looks like the thing that looks like a table is sextile, and then of course you got opposition where things are in here. And you know, for me, the thing that first jumps out here is Jupiter is in the 10th house in opposition to the sun in
Yes.
Libra. This is a
Yeah.
very unbalancing moment.
Yeah, well, the sun and the moon, so it's opposite the new moon.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it's also opposite Mercury and Venus, because even though they're out of sign, they are actually conjunct the new moon. So Venus in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, still retrograde, they are conjunct the new moon.
You know, I have a book coming out. I have a book coming out here in October, and I pushed back the date for some printing reasons, but I'm going to have them when I go down to Florida. Thank you so much. I'm hearing people are buying tickets at a regular pace now at this point. So I appreciate you guys. Click on my link tree, and also for appointments. I opened up my schedule. I kind of have, you know, my filming schedule and what have you. Thursday mornings though is committed to Penny.
Oh, I was going to say, no, you're not here on a Thursday morning, but it's my afternoon.
Yes,
That's cool.
that's right. So what you're saying is I have to be there on Wednesday night? What is up with you? This is how you trick me. Anyways, but with this though, it's, you know, to me, you know, I also looked at the astrology for a book release, and I'm like, it's okay if I push it back a little bit to get away from this energy, quite frankly.
Not in Mercury retrograde. Wait till Mercury's out of shadow, which will be mid-October, really.
Yeah, so 10-10.
Yeah.
10-10-22, 11-1-1-2-2. That's a new start date. So I was originally doing it on my son's birthday, but it kind of makes sense astrologically. And by the way, my son was not, it didn't affect him at all. Like he's like, yeah, you do something special for somebody. You're like, oh, there you go. But you also have this action with Uranus, not only with Saturn, but also you've got this Uranus to the sun in relation to the sun and the moon. So talk about that. Talk about that trine that's happening here.
Yeah. Well, it's not, it's
not quite.
No, it's actually to the sort of the IC, really, isn't it? But we do need to look at Saturn, because Saturn is making an aspect, but also I think what we need to look at perhaps more too, because this brings in some opportunity for kind of something good to come out of the storm that is happening at the moment. Pluto is trining this energy. Pluto in the 8th house. Pluto is insight, transformation. Endings, beginnings. It's in the 8th house. That in itself, I think, is significant, but also because the new moon and Mercury and Venus are in the 4th house. The ascendant is Cancer. This is about home, ancestry, roots. So this is about new beginnings for, you know, I think everything that's happening at the moment is really going to help people value the roots and the connections they have at home, and not only family, blood family, but friends that are like family. I think we're really beginning to realize, with, you know, if we think of the rhetoric that has been coming out of Russia, you know, it kind of sharpens the senses. This is like, we are being threatened. And I think it's, again, it's a bit like when the COVID pandemic hit. It's facing us with potential mortality. And
Well, and
so,
don't forget too, there was a Saturn square Uranus right as the
well,
pandemic hit.
2021
Yeah,
was,
like that's when it really
but
started
we
to
had the
take off.
The Saturn-Pluto conjunction in 2020, in January 2020, which
Yep.
just fell just ahead of the pandemic. Just after that, it was like everything locked down.
Yeah, and I've made the argument that that's known as the great conjunction.
Yes,
And
yes,
it's also, it was also the Star of David. It was the sign of Jesus. It was, so it's kind of like a bookend thing
yeah,
for an age, quite frankly. And now we're
yeah,
moving into this age of Aquarius. And that trine energy to the sun, the Saturn trine to the sun,
mm,
as well as Uranus. And then you have that other influence of, because there's many angles here that will influence that
yeah,
Pluto part of it. I mean, the Saturn sitting in the ninth house in retrograde in Aquarius. This
yeah.
is about learning about a new way. This is about learning about a new structure. In the 11th house, with Uranus, it's kind of like it's that, you've said it before. It's almost like that hidden enemy, that cultural thing of this is like, it's not the way you think it's going to go.
No,
And
it's
look at
not.
all this retrograde externally,
And you see
you know, um,
both Saturn and Uranus on this fourth aspect that they make, this fourth square, are retrograde. So this
yeah,
is about going back to something. This is about finding a solution to something that has started in the past. And it's like an unfolding, an unfoldment of a whole process of
mhm.
what the world has been going through and what we've all been going through on a personal level. And this new moon, of course, has this very sharply in focus in the energy of the new moon.
Yeah,
And
it's also why so many, you mentioned like close friends and family. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but
yeah, no,
what
no,
I'm seeing is like people are like ready to quit their jobs.
mm,
They're not finding value in this. They just want to go home and like let the, let the coins fall where they may, so to speak. They're having their Jerry Maguire moment, holding up their goldfish and saying, "Who's coming with me?" And nobody comes with them, and that's okay. And
mm,
I think that's something that I think, but boy, oh boy, you see the seventh house wide open, you see the sixth house wide open.
mm,
This isn't about survival. This is about an evolution. And you
mm.
look at all those retrogrades. I mean, Uranus, North
Revolution
Node, Eris. What's that?
and revolution.
Yeah, I mean Chiron, Jupiter, Neptune have, but and it's in the last like week and a half, it's moved out of conjunct, which is, or we're heading towards it actually. And then you have, of course, you have Saturn, of course, you have Pluto, and then you have Mercury, which is sitting in one of the personal houses in the fourth house. And
Yeah,
it's kind of like, how is all of that stuff? So you've got to watch how much news you consume. That's a thing,
yeah.
right? You've got to be informed, but not be informed. I think it is one of those things that it irks me a little bit, not in a bad way, but this is just a moment of honesty. When I see somebody say, "Oh, I can't watch the news," you need to develop a tool for yourself to at least stay informed, whatever that is. Even if you're like, Penny is my trusted person, tell me what's going on in the world today, because I trust that you're going to give me the filter that I need to at least stay informed. You need to stay informed, because if not, what you start saying is I don't know what this is. And then you start trying to apply it to everything next to you when it's a global thing. There is a giant revolution going on. The great reveal is coming. And it's this reveal that money doesn't work the way it's set up. Governments don't necessarily work the way that they're set up. And this astrology right now is giving us the opportunity to get it right. You said it perfectly, Penny. It's about going back to the idea.
And look
Our
at,
Pluto return in the US is that's part of what this is.
yeah. And look at that Mercury in Virgo. It's retrograded into Virgo. It rules Virgo. So this is about attention to the details. Look at what's not being said. That's what I feel that's saying. It's really,
Mm,
if it's on a personal level, what's not being said at home that maybe needs to
mm,
come out into the open? What details are being overlooked? Because, Virgo is about detail.
yeah.
And you see, Venus isn't at her best in Virgo. So, this is about, almost analyzing one's self-worth. What is my value at home?
What's
Am
my
I
value in
valued?
any relationship?
Yeah,
In
am I
any
valued by
relationship.
my family? Am I valued by anyone?
Yeah, we were just talking about this a little bit, and on a personal note, I feel like, okay, well, I keep doing these actions, and I really work on my emotional IQ every day. I do it through journaling, I do it through some other things, and I actually have a class I'm going to be teaching coming up here in the next couple of months. It's actually in November, but I don't mind teasing it now. It's basically a 30-day gratitude challenge of journals. And it's something where I'm actually partnering with someone in order to do it. But the reason why I'm bringing it up here is communication, and Mercury is about action as well. It's just not about what you say, it's about what you do. It's the body language, it's the distancing, it's the parts where you can get angry with. And I found myself seeing my pattern. I'll just say it like that. So what's come out of this for me is I've seen my pattern, and I'm like, why do I keep doing this? I'm not like, I don't need it for personal gratification. I went through that checklist. I did it because I thought I was helping people. If anything else, I tend to put myself out there a little bit. What the universe has showed me time and time again, I got to take care of myself. I got to put my mask on first before I help others. Well, that has everything to do with the fourth house. That has everything to do with you saying, listen, family, I mean, being an adoptive foster parent, I have a responsibility to 3 young men for them to get their shit together. Yeah. We're outside the 2.5 minutes. I can swear a little.
All right, we're outside the
Yeah, that was pretty
minutes.
good. But but what I'm noticing is like, I can't be too busy. I have to have focus time. I have to have time where I, even if it's just once a month, hey, you and I are going to go hang out, buddy. What are we going to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? They're at that impressionable age where they need that component. And to me, that's Mercury in retrograde sitting here in the 4th house with Virgo.
And also, I think it's interesting what you're saying about the fact that your sons are adopted, because that is almost more of a responsibility than if they were your biological children, because you chose to take these children on.
It's a dirty chess game, isn't it?
And you chose that, and I admire that, because
thank you.
That is a huge responsibility, and all credit to you for choosing to do it and choosing to honor it and respect it.
Yeah, it's truly one of those things that I always have that in my forefront. So I have that part of it. And it's very easy to just dismiss it as in like, well, whatever I do is much better than what they were going to have. No, that's not creating a standard. That's creating, a placid response. It's more about, this is the way I want this to go. So I think it is part of that responsibility. But when I see the trap, I think what I'm about to say is probably not going to be popular, but I see a lot of people do adoptions, especially international adoptions, because they want to fulfill something or they're trying to save something in the world. Their action itself is very admirable, but there's a lot of kids in your own backyard. There's that. Yeah. Second of all, it's, they think it's a movie. Blindside came out 14 years ago, give or take, and Sandra Bullock's, a fantastic actress in it because she pulls off the empathy card very well, with a little sass and a little whatever. And it's about a man that gets adopted through a family, and they never really adopt them. They take him in. It's more about foster care, really. And he has this ability to protect the people around him because he cherishes so little, and so little cherished him. So it was a conditioning as much as a response. And there was a spike in adoptions. There was at least interest in adoptions and foster care and that sort of thing at about that time. And I'm here to tell you, with the current laws, if we don't have that system clean, we're going to get overrun. We are going to get overrun. It leads to crime rates. It leads to those sorts of things. I'm digressing a little bit, but this energy right here is me saying, I don't want them to be a statistic. I've always been guarded in the statistics. Even with the book coming out, how I talk about it in terms of my journey, not like what I did for them, but what they did for me. And it's much different. It's a different mindset. I mean, thank you for bringing that up. And I always appreciate it. I'm just a very, I'm not even I'm the advocate slash critic of that process. And when you see like setups like this, this could be something where, you've got to really get your priorities in line. It's really about commitment more so than even family. What are your commitments? Like, that's the way I look at it,
It's also,
but that's just an opinion.
Yeah, it's also, and this is going to bring me back into the chart, but
Yeah.
it's also about facing up to our shadow, facing up to the sort of the difficulties that come with those kind of responsibilities, and not doing it for self-gratification or look at me, aren't I wonderful, I've done all of this, but actually looking at the real nitty-gritties of it. And if we look at this chart and you look at the sun and the moon, the new moon in Libra is squaring the part of fortune and Lilith in Cancer. Now, I think Lilith in this instance is about facing up to our shadow, facing up to those dark demons that lurk within all of us. And there are certain world figures that I know we're going to talk about who also need to do that. But this is like saying, this is an opportunity for you. Look at the shit inside. Oh, dip, sorry, no, 2.5 minutes. Look at that stuff inside. Look at the dark of you. Look at the, Lilith is dark moon Lilith. She is about the demonized kind of side of ourselves. Yeah. We all have a shadow. And this is like the part of fortune there is saying luck comes through honoring that shadow side of yourself. Once you sit with that discomfort, once you really look at yourself truly in the mirror, and I know you do this because we've talked about it at length, and I do too, and have done for many, many years because of my background in psychotherapy as a client and also as a therapist, because I don't believe you can work competently as a therapist if you're not constantly in your own therapy and looking at your own stuff.
So that bias, right? It's that filter of bias.
Yes. So this new moon is actually giving a wonderful opportunity to, Libra all sounds very nice and balanced and relationshipy and kind of nice, lovely stuff. And that may be so, but there's not really anything about relationships in this particular new moon. If you look at the 7th house, it's empty. 5th house, we've got Scorpio, and we've also got the South Node and the vertex. And now this is almost like you are now karmically having to address what you have set in place through this lifetime.
It's a Wheel of Fortune card. It's the Wheel of Fortune card.
Let's forget the past lifetimes, but let's just go through what is being looked at through this lifetime, and where one keeps making the same maybe relationship mistakes. And it's about also how we relate within the family, and where do we, shove things under the carpet. And Saturn, of course, is squaring this South Node and actually making kind of like a T-square between Uranus and the South Node, and the North Node is also obviously opposite the South Node. So you've got this tension, and you've got Uranus that wants to break out. And
nothing's comfortable. Nothing's comfortable.
Nothing is comfortable.
And you're being forced to sit in it. And that's why you get it at work. That's why you're like, I don't know what this is, but I'm done.
Yes.
That's why you're sitting there at home going, why is none of this working? Why am I allowing this to repeat? Is this me? And here's the thing too, and I think whether it's work or whatever, this is why this Mercury retrograde in Virgo is so important, is because are you communicating and are you acting in a way where you're trying to solve it or you're trying to blame it?
Exactly.
And by the way, it's your choice. Yeah. If you are consistently justifying that you can be 10 minutes late for work because the boss is always leaving at 3 o'clock, you're not helping it. You're justifying it. Yeah. So you can say, hey, listen, I took some liberties here. I'll never forget this. This energy right here reminds me of when I was early in the recruiting years. And I worked for a small mom and pop, and they sometimes had to rob Peter to PayPal because their billing was behind or whatever. And they were a good company. They had the best intention. And I had an amazing boss. He was just one of those guys that he's like, I don't want any drama. He was just, super let's just get it done. Like classic Leo, come on, buddy. Didn't have to make it about him, but if you made it about you, he was like, me too. Well, the combination, I'll never forget it. I couldn't get supplies. I couldn't get paper for the printer. And this is at a time when fax machines ruled and, everything else. So I just called up, the other office that seemed to have freelance to do whatever it is they wanted because they trusted them and didn't trust me. Meanwhile, my handle was 12 times what there was. I said, I need this paper. Why don't we meet for lunch? I'm going to give you an order, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up doing that. And I got in all of this trouble because I wasn't treated equally. I was somehow overlooked, or I was treated like a whatever. And I went to an extreme to prove a point because I was uncomfortable with the conversation. Now, I had tried the initial route of saying, why can I not get this? Why is this always a conversation? Why is this always blah, blah, blah? And then they were just like, well, we don't know. We're not set up for that. Well, it's a 30-second phone call. Brandon's going to order stuff, drop it off. It's not whatever. The reason why I'm pointing this out is that's what we're dealing with here in the US when it comes to this immigration thing where we ship people to another side of the country. How they treated them was horrible. The point is well taken. There is an urgent need, and we need to have an open dialogue about how to solve some of these problems, duly noted. But how you went about it was wrong. Just like how I went about getting those supplies were wrong. I was justified in doing it. I justified it. I didn't solution it. I justified it. Ron DeSantis justified it. He didn't solution it. He would rather be a martyr about it. So this positioning to me sets you up to be the martyr of the person that is always taking the brunt of things. Are you doing it yourself? Are you communicating this and saying, this is how we're doing it? And I see it. I see it. I can think of 1,000 examples, and I think you guys can too. Go ahead and comment below how this energy is making you take on personal accountability. And by the way, when the other person doesn't respond because you're communicating to them, they've given you the answer, and then you have to make decisions. You still are in the position of action. Correct?
That is very, very true. And I think it is about, well done. It is about this, with therapy, we talk about, with psychotherapy, we talk about the fact that if there is a situation in your life which is challenging and difficult and uncomfortable, you don't try and go la, 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 and hope it will just go away. You have to sit with the feelings of being uncomfortable. You have to sit and face it. You have to sit with the uncertainty. We've all been taught over the last 2 or 3 years, really, to face uncertainty through the pandemic, through what's happening in Russia, Eastern Europe.
Yeah, we got to get to that.
Nothing is certain in life. Nothing is certain. And we are having a huge wake-up call, courtesy of Uranus square Saturn, that is saying, if you don't sit with this, if you don't really, really look at this energy and work with it, look at your own life, at your own path, your own process, where do you keep making the same mistakes? How can you actually change that this time? Is it that you always rush in? Are you always going after the same person? What could you do differently this time that would honor the Saturn-Uranus square? And I think because we've been doing this for actually almost nearly half an hour, believe it or not.
I know.
But I think we should look at the two prime candidates we have.
Well, I think my regards.
You want to start with that.
My regards to the Russian people who are trying to get a flight to Istanbul right now. Wow.
Listen, what's happened in the last 48 hours is extraordinary. First of all, his speech, Vladimir Putin's speech, happened virtually 24 hours later. And the news channels are saying this is probably because there was mayhem in the Kremlin. I think they were trying to tone him down, calm him down, and get some kind of balance, Libra new moon, into what he's saying, because he was coming out all guns firing. And the words I've heard used on the news channels here are, what can you do when you're dealing with someone who is extremely paranoid and has a persecution complex? And that is what we are dealing with.
It's a high level of narcissism right there.
Yes, exactly.
You know, covert, direct, whatever, malignant. I mean, you know, the labels go on. And I always caution people that, you know, that recommend or talk about other people. So, you know, in that regard, so this is, we're looking at Vladimir right now.
Yes.
And the parallels between what the US and Russia are going through right now are pretty staggering.
I couldn't believe that they virtually all happened on the same day.
Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, we're going to take a look at our, you know, at the, what is, he's being called the Orange Jesus now.
Oh my God.
Because of how Liz Cheney depicted him, and it's nonsense. I cannot believe that we've gotten to this point, but I think it's a very necessary point. Now, the challenge in Russia, of course, just to kind of do a little bit of summary here, basically Vladimir Putin took to the podium after visiting China, shoring up that relationship.
A day late.
Yeah, okay, fine then. Well, then let us recognize that the astrology needed to get into place. Now we're taking a look at the equinox, and I know it'd be really interesting for us to shift gears right now and talk about another chart, you know, of that time of the speech. But here's the deal with it, though. This autumn equinox, you know, he's coming up on happy birthday time. He's also coming up on, I mean, just look at this Mercury action for him that is coming up. He had so much born in the 12th house. Yeah. And you look at how much he was externalized. His internal things are in the second house. His Mars is in the second house. And that's his rage and how he looks at people and how he thinks he can control them. Period. End of conversation.
Yeah.
His Chiron in Capricorn. By the way, Chiron healing in Capricorn is all about, what did I lose and how do I get it back?
Yeah. And it's hard work.
I mean, it's a difficult thing. And I mean, his Mars is in opposition right now. So he's at odds with himself, right? He has to rely on other people as it sits there in the 8th house. And he can't do that. So he's really doubling down on self-satisfaction. What's your take on this?
Well, I'm looking at the moon actually in Leo for the autumn equinox. And that the ascendant for the autumn equinox is also Leo, which I find quite interesting, because what it's doing is it's putting his Pluto in the 12th house of the autumn equinox. So he is really feeling backed into a corner, I would say, and he is ready to blow. And I think we have to be very careful. And I'm sure the West and NATO and the UN and everything are fully aware of this, because I don't think I've ever heard any of the sort of leaders of the free world, let's call them that, be so concerned about the rhetoric that Putin is putting out.
But Biden called it out. Biden called it out in his UN address, and he's basically like, listen, you know, we have 100 and some odd sovereign countries here, and none of us think this is okay. Like, we are in agreement. This is not a time to sit around and talk about rhetoric. This is a time of, what are we going to do? And
the news
and he's rightfully, and listen, we're our place in the US in the history of world events. We've taken the lead too many times. It's time for other countries to say, don't do that. And that way it doesn't become a US Russian thing. We have to be the big brother and say, you have to fight this. I'm going to tell you where to swing.
Yeah.
Like, that is our, that's the challenge. We've been the ones going, all right, we'll do this ourselves. We do it too many times. It's created a Goomba complex. It's created a thuggery around the world. And quite frankly, that's not how most Americans look at it. And it's been manipulated in ways we could spend 20 whiskey and bagels on.
Yeah, yeah.
But in a nutshell, he called for us to call him out in this way. And I see this 7th house with his Jupiter in his natal, and then Uranus kind of just flowing through with the North Node, he is destined to try and fuck up everybody.
Yeah. And you know what he's doing, which I find just sickening, is that he's putting us, the rest of us, in a kind of almost like a no-win position, because what he's saying is, I'm going to hold referendums in Donetsk and the other areas down there that he's got a little bit of control in. And if they say they want to be part of the motherland, then if the West supply arms to Ukraine to fight, to continue fighting in those regions, it's an attack against the motherland. Therefore, he has every right and justification to launch a few nukes at Washington, London and Paris. And I thought, when I heard this, I thought, my God.
I don't think he's going to make it out of the year. I really don't. I mean, you're right. He's backed into the corner. I think that his own people are revolting in such a way. I saw this morning, they have something like 30,000 people in detention. Yes. Half of which are children, are minors and women, which are the ones that are
partial conscription. And
right.
Russians are revolting, basically. They are going on the streets and protesting, which is the Saturn-Uranus square. It also fits in with all the energy of the autumn equinox, the new moon. It is, we have to look at the ascendant, I think, the autumn equinox, which is Leo. So, how we are going to be seen, how the rest of us are going to be seen, is we're not going to take this sitting down. Well, and that moon on his Pluto and his Lilith.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is like saying,
he finds power in dark shit.
Yeah, you show some empathy, mate, or you are in deep, deep horse dung.
Yeah, and listen, this is fate. This is people turning against him. This is the time of Caesar for him. And I think you can just take that in any way you want.
Yes.
This is also his, and and you look at where Lilith is, it's coming up on his natal, Uranus. So it's like every combination, when you really look at a chart, it almost looks like a locker combination. And that's what this is. Left to Uranus, right to Saturn, back to the moon, forward to the sun. Like, you can think of a combination like that, right? The part of it, and this is the way I see it, and I've been able to describe it, is you have personal, societal, personal. Personally, Putin is going through this, all of the things that we're talking about, this 9th, 10th house thing where he's going to be very public about showing the world what not to do, and he can either show empathy or not. That's where his lesson is. He has the 7th house in his friendships and his relationships, with Uranus and the North Node coming over the top of it going, are you fucking sure that you and by the way, that Jupiter placement in 7th house has served him for years. His ability to expand and shake hands and say, and basically push an agenda, where he's been able to be like, oh, I have a lot of, exchange partners for trade and social political stuff and whatever. Now it's kicking him in the ass because he's overplayed his hand, right? So that's the personal. Then you have the societal, where you see Uranus in the 7th house sitting in Taurus going, we got to get back to basics. We're not going to let somebody that, even though, no matter how charming he is, we can't put up with this.
Yeah.
Right. And in the moon, being in Leo moon, like Leo moon is all about getting it right. Self-love, self-gratification. You've got the retrogrades going on with Pluto, with Uranus, with Saturn, and right. And then you have the personal, which is the people that are revolting. They too are feeling this Saturn square Uranus, and they're like, this is not the motherland we signed up for. This is not the country we know us to be. So now you have this personal, societal, personal conflict where it's his truth, you have their truth, and then you have the truth that's going to come out of this. That is a common theme with the Saturn square Uranus. That's just that's the best way I can describe it. It manifests itself in riots. What's that?
Yeah. we need to look at that Eris in the 6th house, because this is his day-to-day kind of routine. It's also the house of hidden enemies. And this is Eris. This is the street fighter. This is the Russians coming out and saying, you're not taking my son and having him killed.
And it's happening in the 10th house.
Yes, as well.
This is a public execution.
Yeah.
Sorry. We just said it. I said it. I said it. They're going to drag him out into the streets, guys. That's what his chart looks like. And listen, this isn't like us going, please, we never inflict pain on people. But the guy's still bombing schools. He's saying, if you threaten me anymore, I'm just going to bomb you.
He is so caught in his own personal narcissism, paranoia, fear, and persecution complex that even the most closest of associates to him will not be able to get through to him. I just think he's lost it at the moment, and it will be his downfall.
Oh, speaking of downfall, you want to look at this side of the aisle?
But can I just say, just a minute before you do that, the problem we've got, and I really hope sincerely this does not happen. He's a Scorpio ascendant. Scorpios like the last word. I'm pointing my finger, I mustn't do that. Scorpios like the last word. And is it that, he wants to take us down with him? That's the big fear. If he knows he's going down.
I wouldn't be so sure if he didn't say something. I'm spitballing to this, I'm not predicting this, but he is the type of person that would hurt his own people to try and say, see, I told you they were coming. And they wouldn't know where the source of the bombs were coming from.
Oh my God.
Doesn't take long to change the coordinates.
No.
I'm just telling you.
And now we have a right to bomb the West.
No, more like, if I go, you go, because I loved you that much.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's a nuclear suicide pact. I mean, that's the energy that I think he's presenting. He knows he's lost. He knows he's lost Ukraine.
Yeah.
He knows that the only thing that he has is the ignorance of people, and the ignorance of people has changed.
And today, the Russians let go of a whole load of prisoners of war.
Really?
Really seriously. And there were some English guys.
Which war? Are they like Ukraine or?
No, these were Ukrainian separatists who were on the side of the Russians, who had prisoners of war that were Ukrainians, and there were some Brits. And one of the Saudi dignitaries, princes or sheikhs, whatever, has brokered a deal that has allowed something like 1,300 prisoners to be exchanged.
For what?
Russians. So they've sent them back some Russians, and we've got the Ukrainians back.
So they get more soldiers. They get more soldiers.
I think I've got that right. Yes, good point.
So he can enlist them. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all that is.
Yeah.
Now, isn't this the trend, as we get into my orange friend here, isn't this the trend that the orange Jesus, the trend that the structure is going to win? The immovable force goes up against the other immovable object, and something's got to give, right? That's where conflict is. That's how energy works. That's how physics works. And so in the truths of laws of nature, we also have the laws of human existence and how our nature develops in envelopes. One of the things in the hallmarks of Donald J. Trump is that he was always just ahead of it. He was always just like, he wasn't really held accountable. If he didn't comment on it, it didn't exist. If the truth didn't work, then he could just make stuff up, which, by the way, is the dangerous thing that I see most often out of people right now. They just make up some other alternate reality, right? So the dynamic into this is that when people have this conversation, is that when you see a chart like Trump or Putin, you realize that the structure for them, since they have manipulated the structure for so long, that now it's coming to roost. You've got your Mercury in retrograde. You've got that square, the Saturn-Uranus square. You've got these subtle things that basically say, if you were doing it right, for the people that are doing it right, it's focusing in on an aspect of your life where you're like, oh, it's my home life. Oh, I've got to do this better at work or whatever. For them, it's everything to them. So it's encompassing this of how much bullshit they've been spewing. And we're going to pull up the Trump chart. By the way, how much coverage do you get of Trump now?
Oh, we got a lot when the news broke.
Which news? Because he's got, he literally has 33, I think it's 33. I quote me on this, write it down below. 33 lawsuits where he is brought as the defendant. That's insane.
Okay, what hit the news here was the fact that he was being sued by, is it New York State?
New York. Yep.
Including his 4 eldest children for tax fraud, for making the, properties sound as if they're more valuable than they really are.
You should see the size of my crowd. My crowd is beautiful. I have so many people here in my crowd. It's just phenomenal. He didn't just inflate the dollars. He inflated the size of his,
size again.
Oh, God. He's got a small dick. It's in his chart. Anyways, I'm sorry. That was very crude. Please censor me. But he was actually saying in his 10,000 square foot apartment that it was 30,000 square feet.
Right. Yes.
So then he could appropriate his values, right? He has had, and it all comes down to a porn star. This case comes down to the porn star that he paid off, Stormy. She, that whole thing of the exchange and the money and the hush money and the blah, 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 was just an attempt. And it was a functional thing that Michael Cohen's just like, yeah, this is like fait accompli. You think this is the only one? You're nuts. But in his, in those actions, that allowed Michael Cohen to say, why am I serving this dude when he just sold me out? And that opened up a can of worms. He had said something in his testimony. They came back and Letitia, I really should know her name. I should honor her here. The concept of law is to do it without favor, is to do it without, without segregation of whatever. This is the same woman that took down a governor in New York who was a Democrat. This is a woman who has no problem saying, if you did it wrong, you did it wrong. And listen, she's all about like, listen, she's not unreasonable. She's like, if you're over the top, these are my cases. I'm the attorney general. I'm up here. This isn't a local thing. This isn't a whatever. I let that stuff go. I'm not meddling. The fact that case alone basically will render him penniless. 250 million is the starting conversation for tax fraud. By the way, why else? In the tax returns that they stole, he basically said he made $11,000 a year at the end of the day. Taxable. I'm sorry, what? And listen, I am not somebody that says tax the rich. I think that's the biggest horse hockey shit I've ever seen. Pay what's fair. Pay what's a fair amount, right? If 10% is the fair rate, let's just call everybody. I'm a big flat tax guy. I really am. Like scale to, because you can plan flat tax. You can say if I go from 50,000 to 100,000, I'm going to go from 5,000 to 10,000 in taxes. You can predict that. Most people in America, when they sit down to do their taxes, they don't know where it's going to land. So they squirrel away money, or they don't even bother, and they end up in one or the other, lexicons. That's why it's like when you're going to pitch something, you're going to offer something, start it on March 15th, because that's when most people start to file their taxes that are getting their money back. They're getting their money back in the middle of March. And by the way, there would be a revolution if we had to write a check every quarter, but instead we have it taken out in our paychecks and we never really feel the pain.
Mm.
There's a lot of things with this. So Donald Trump takes all of the chaos, Captain Chaos, I'm going to call him Captain Chaos, is that he's taken all that chaos of like, well, you have a moving target and everything gets manipulated. What it really comes down to is a systematic, functional dismantling of him getting away with it because nobody held him accountable. Yeah. Not his parents, not the banks. These banks that he defaulted on, by the way, that gets passed on to the taxpayers here in the United States. That's how we divide that stuff up. Right? It ends up in subsidiaries. It ends up in tax breaks down the road for those companies that take losses. That's how it equivocates. And he basically knew, and even this thing with his with the document storage stuff, he called for a special master, and the special master said, okay, well, what's the purpose of me being here? And they're like, well, some of those should be returned to Trump's and some of those are declassified. And he said, okay, which ones? And they didn't say anything. He proved that it was just a stall tactic. And again, this is not a storage documentation issue. And if you don't see the link between Vladimir Putin's over-the-top zealousness, his relationship with Trump, and missing fucking documents that are of the highest sensitivities of other people's nuclear capabilities and operatives around the world, you're out of your mind. Ukraine happened. I'm going to say it. They're going to find out that Ukraine in part happened because of the leaks out of the United States, and Donald Trump was the biggest damn spout there was. I mean, listen, there was revenge in this because he got indicted because of his interactions with Ukraine. He got in trouble because he went to a foreign power and said, if you could dig up some stuff on the Bidens, that'd be great. By the way, accountability now can't happen because Biden, it's now about the turpitude instead of holding Biden accountable. So now Biden gets away with this stuff. It's instead of looking at it as in like, hey, I'm being justified because I'm doing it, they're proving a point. But what they're also doing, like Ron DeSantis with shipping everybody up here, your point would have been better taken if you had eloquently talked about, can we do this and set this up in other ways? You are our leader, not a crybaby, right? Brandon in 2002 or 1998 was a crybaby because he didn't have his supplies handed to him, right? And I'm like, oh, that wasn't good form, right? You grew up though. I was 22 years old or however old I was. I don't know. I just make stuff up now. But Donald Trump now, looking at his chart, this is coming to roost.
Yes.
I'm sorry to dominate this, but I take it away from the chart side of it. It's staggering, and I have a point to all of it. But let's look at the chart.
Can I sort of come in here with what I think is going to happen? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things I want to kind of get across with this.
Yeah, let's hit it.
First of all, let's start at the top. Let's start with the 9th house and the 10th house, because I do think the chickens are coming home to roost, because Uranus is going to be going across his midheaven back and forwards for the next few years. He is going to be in the public eye and he is going to be in the headlines, but it may not be for the reasons that he wants. Now, secondly, he has got at least 7 months of SH1T, because I'm so frightened of YouTube now and saying anything that's inappropriate. So he has got Mars on his Uranus in his 10th house. I wouldn't be very comfortable with that placement there in my own chart. And that Mars is going to go back and forwards over his Uranus, his North Node, and his Sun. And I think he is going to put himself in the SH1T in such a way that he thinks he's being clever and he won't get found out, but he's going to be left with 0. That brings me down to the 2nd house of finance and personal finances, and the fact that the new moon is going to be there. But I'm just looking at what it is on the autumn equinox, which is the 0 degree of Libra for both the sun and Mercury that's retrograde. This tells me he's got nothing left in his purse or his piggy bank to barter with. He's run out of options. Then that brings me to the 12th house, and I will finish off with the 7th house because that's my pièce de résistance. But the 12th house,
right.
the 12th house tells us that he really is up shit creek without paddle, because it's Leo. His ego is being challenged on every single front. This, as you often say, is the house of the undoing. And his natal Pluto is in the 12th house of the event chart, as well as being in his own 12th house.
His rising's in the 12th house right now. His ego as a Leo is absolutely ripping him apart.
Yes, well, remember, he is the inner chart.
Right.
So his ascendant is Leo, with the moon, the transiting moon
right.
is in the 12th house, his 12th house, conjunct his natal Mars.
The Mars thing's the thing for me.
It's the Mars. And also, I'm just going to come to my pièce de résistance, which is the lovely asteroid Juno in Pisces in the 7th house. Women are going to be his undoing.
So yeah, the AG in New York
dumps him in it.
You've got, I mean, listen, you know, I'll even say it here. You have, you know, Letitia, the DEA in New York, or the AG rather, Attorney General woman. You have Liz Cheney leading the Congress hearings on January 6th. And by the way, he gave a speech last weekend that sounded eerily familiar. By the way, my Order 66 is going to become immortalized from that call and prediction, because not only did I see it in his chart, but now he's doing it. He basically riled up however many people he had, but he still had this broadcast basically saying, you know, if they take me down, I know you'll rise up and take it back. And, you know, I believe in all of you. It's not for me, it's for democracy. He's a player. He got hired by the US and he's driving it into the ground. He doesn't understand its principles, its understanding. And honestly, I don't even think he can read, but let's not even get into that.
But look at that Lilith, look at that transiting Lilith conjunct his natal Mercury. He's going to put himself in the SH1T horse dung, which really belongs to Putin, horse dung, but you know, that's another story. But you know, he's going to put himself in it. He's going to drop himself in it all over the place. And his family are not going to be very helpful to him.
We called that a month ago. We called that a month ago, that his family, it's just a matter of time before his family and his friends really just kind of distance themselves, because he's uncontrollable. I mean, the stories coming out, there have been like 6 or 7 biographical takes on what it was like to be behind the scenes in the Trump White House. And it was mayhem every day. People were turning against each other. There was nothing cohesive. There was nothing, you know, it was like he tried to fucking buy Greenland. He tried to trade Puerto Rico for Greenland, like if we were playing Risk or something. Like I'm gonna go to Kamachka from Alaska. Like he just has this. I think the people that supported him appreciated the fact that he wasn't an insider. But now we just see how dangerous it is that not only does the insider or the outsider can come in and create this chaos, but they don't have a firm appreciation or an understanding of the basic stuff. He didn't understand peaceful transfer of power. He didn't, because he's so busy telling people he won. By the way, the other feminine energy in this is also Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland is a very soft soul. That man is compassed. He understands the law. He is, you know, we're not, you know, we're going to do this without favor, and he has just been true to form. When we talk about the rise of women or the rise of feminine energy, this is what the energy people were talking about, not put a woman in charge. No, this is about saying, it's the tough lessons. I understand you're broken, Donald Trump, but this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. This is taking, and it's a very shamanic approach, because what we're saying is we care about you enough to say, we have to make you stop. Look at all the other people you're hurting. There is going to be a plug pull in this with when Trump goes down that will actually ruin an economy. New York City, he owned, at one point he talked about owning like of course he said like 15% of the city. And what he really owned was maybe 2%. Like he had like 2% stake. And that was by square footage, not by dollar amount. And it's never been by dollar amount. And I think what's going to happen is that not only do you have these people that are still believing in him, which, okay, whatever, he didn't do anything to you. He wouldn't put you out if you were on fire, but by all means, go ahead and, stay that course. But then you also have the economic impact of all the promises that he kind of put into place, promise to pay, promise to whatever. And this is checkmate, everybody. This is checkmate on Putin energetically. This is checkmate on Trump. I mean, I know you want to get to a few more aspects here, but
listen, I had this wonderful idea as you were talking just then, because NASA are sending up, it's probably already gone actually, are sending up a rocket today to push an asteroid off course. Now, if you actually said to both Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump, listen, you can make history here, the two of you, by going up and saving the planet from an asteroid hit. Actually, the asteroid isn't going to hit Earth. They're just practicing for when maybe one does. And they can go up in the rocket. They will both, unfortunately, hit the asteroid and die. And NASA will prove a point that they can send a rocket up and deflect an asteroid from hitting Earth.
I just wanted to say that the reason why I took this mission is for all of you that have supported for me and stayed with us. I've already begun to sign the paperwork in order to make sure that I am the fifth face of Mount Rushmore. I will depict my hair quite properly. Know that that's what I will be thinking about as I'm riding that rocket ship, and I will be pushing that asteroid out of the way. I will be thinking about all of you and how amazing you are to me. All 25, 30 million, 200 billion people love me.
And you know what Putin will say? Can my horse come with me?
Oh, that poor horse. Yeah. Do we have to replay that? Because that was just a beautiful moment. But yeah, well, no, I think Putin would need the slant, as in, actually, this is when Putin would do it. And this is the market, transition between the two of them. And we're seeing this as case studies, guys. We're seeing it not to be political. We're using them as case studies that you have knowledge of. So understand why we're political here. Everybody can relate. Putin is going to say, the only way Putin would get on that rocket ship is to say, none of you are going to step up, then I'm going to step up. I will do it. Like he has
I'm not bluffing.
Yeah, I'm not bluffing.
He said, I'm not bluffing.
And the dynamic with him is you're all incompetent, right? Trump utilizes everybody else's incompetency and then plays it off. It's like, you want me to go on a rocket ship? I don't know how to fly a rocket ship. Why would you put me in a rocket ship? Aren't there somebody else? I'm sure that there's a lot of, I'm not going to say it. I'm sure that there's a lot of lesser Americans that should be on that, and I will honor them and I will shout their name. Like he has no problem. I mean, this is a guy that tried to use the military. I mean, let's not forget all the shenanigans that Trump did during his presidency. He wanted to have a full regalia military march on Washington to honor him, a la North Korea, a la Russia. I mean, it was just like, that's not what we do here. You know what we do? We take a couple of volunteers. By the way, anytime you see somebody in military in a parade, they're not paid for it. That is a volunteer thing, right? So if you see the tank, I mean, yeah, we had to get permission and yeah, all this other stuff, but they're there because they feel compelled to be in that parade. That's it. We're not here to honor somebody. We're not here to whatever. It is that. And I think all of this energy, I know it looks dark. Like, this is a thing I keep telling people. I know it looks dark. I know you're feeling like the energies are here. This is a comeuppance, and this is why I have any empathy for Putin or Trump. They're needing to face demons that they don't have the tools to face, period. That's what you're finding out personally. Do you have the tools to deal with this energy? That's the test. That's
Yeah.
why you should have empathy with everyone you meet right now. That is why if somebody's coming in a little bit hot, you got to go, okay, that's your truth. Let's flush this out. There's a way for us to, and I've seen it in my own life where I've been personally challenged and things. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, and at first I get hung up on the, did you just say that to me? And then I'm turning it around and I'm like, oh, do I have the tools for this? Now I know
And
why this is.
maybe I need to look at my part in this.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what people are not doing, and what Putin and Trump are not doing. They're not being accountable. They're not saying, I wonder if I've somehow brought this on myself. Because often what happens, and this is the Saturn-Uranus square,
Yeah.
is that we tend to get ourselves into situations again and again and again where we have brought it on ourselves,
Yeah.
where we won't sit with the difficulty, as I said earlier, with the fact that it's uncomfortable and I don't want to go within and do the work. People don't do the work. They're not prepared to do the work.
No.
They don't even know what the work is.
Why do you think we coach, Penny? Why do you think we're available to coach people through tough times like this?
Empower people to do the work, to find the part of themselves that can manage all of this. It's not to help people, it's to empower people.
Yes.
Let me give you the tools.
Let me show you how to fish instead of handing you a fish.
An astrology session or a life coaching session with me, please get in touch.
Yeah, it's, you know, I'm just going to, I'll be your rousing endorsement. She's wonderful, everybody. You know, but I think it's when, I mean, I think that's been our magic spot from the beginning with those two colleagues that needed one another to bounce stuff off of. Hey, what about this with business? Hey, what about this with emotions?
Yeah.
And that's I've become a better person since I met you.
Oh, Brandon.
I just have, because I think it's, you know, that I didn't have those tools. It's funny. I just posted something. And by the way, those of you that are on Facebook, follow my Facebook page.
MEMEBER as well.
What's it? Yeah. I mean, you know, as much as the TikToks and the Instagrams and all that other stuff, I've got a decent following out there, and I'm taking my old business and moving it forward into my business. But it's, you know, I made a post about a piece of music that I wrote a long time ago. And it's very simple. It was very cathartic. It was right when the pandemic hit and I was letting a lot of things go. And as I'm listening to it, since then, I have new equipment, I have new tools, I have new everything, new influences. Hey, I know how to turn this into orchestration. I know how to do this. You know, I would use a guitar line I might not have heard back then, but I hear it now. And I made this post basically saying, all you need to know is that I wrote this for this time of the season. It's about leaves falling. Okay. It's about letting go. And it's just this gentle flow. And then I created this video of these, you know, leaves floating down a pond. It's very serene. But my commentary on it is, when I wrote it as is. If I could go back, I would do this, this, and this. But I also realized I just didn't have the tools at the time to create something different, so I can appreciate it for what it is and how far I've come. Musicians are acknowledging it. Musicians are saying, like, nope, buddy, this has got the feels. This is all you needed to do. We get why you did this. People that were just looking for a nice video about leaves falling and soft piano music in the background, just whatever. And it's an important thing, because my own self-awareness, I used to sit there and go, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Now I'm like, oh, what am I going to do next time? You know, I'm coaching my 9-year-old son, and, you know, he struck out. Okay. I'm like, what are you going to do next time? And he goes, yeah, but the pitcher threw the ball. And I go, what are you going to do next time? Yeah, but the umpire called the, what are you going to do next time? Yeah, well, everybody's cheering. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to do next time? Who's the one with the bat up to plate? And he's like, well, I got to swing. And I go, let's start there. And he goes, okay. That's how we have to look at this. Does that make sense?
Yes, because it's about being accountable. It's about taking responsibility for our actions, our own dark side, our own difficulties, our own challenges, our own problems, and knowing that there are ways that we can do things differently and get different and better results.
Like I said, I've become a better person since I met you. And listen, every relationship that I have, I get better at this, right? I can list 100 people right now. But the reason why I'm bringing this up to you is because these are our conversations, you know, and I have people that those things come off of, but I have to say it like this. I've made those relationships better because I self-reflect like this. And I always had the ability. I just didn't always apply it. It's like anything. It's like I'm excellent at telling somebody else what to do, but I don't really take my own advice.
Yeah.
We all do it.
We can all be pretty good at that. I've got to the point where I'm much better at now taking my own advice. I now listen to myself. I listen to my astrology. I listen to us.
I pull my chart every day.
And, you know, one of the things that has really changed for me since we started working together is my knowledge of astrology has really got even better because I've worked hard at working on the content that we're doing. And because you were so encouraging and supportive to help me get to that magical first milestone of 1K, I just threw everything into it to get that done. And so that my confidence, my self-esteem has improved 100% since we started working together. So thank you for that.
Well, I'm glad. I appreciate you for that. All right, we really should wrap up before we get into. I mean, there's I got a notification that there was more breaking news in the Trump world. It's just it's blown up.
Oh,
it's blown up yet again. I think he's facing another according. They say they're not going to do it, but they say that yeah, no, it's just update stuff. But anyways, you never know with what, you know, when your phone's dinging and, you know, all that other stuff. I was like, oh, I'll just take a look. All right, love. Listen, hey, you're an amazing soul. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for joining us. Like and subscribe. We're available for all the stuff that we do. We help one another. And we're going to give each other the heart tap, and we're going to remind each other to simply keep going. Penny, thank you again, as always.
Thank you, Brandon.
All right. See you next time, guys.
See you next time.